Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, topic of discussion is IR lasers. Now, if you've been in this community for a few years or more, you've seen the rise in popularity of night vision, lasers, and thermals. You've also probably seen the rise in people telling you that if you don't own any or all of the aforementioned devices, that you'll be killed in the streets. And it's nonsense, but that's a topic for another day. Now, I originally recorded this video about a month ago, and it was, after editing and whatnot, it was about an hour long on all these devices. So I realized that's too long. Trust me, I like long format videos as much as the next guy. I'm sure some of you do as well. But an hour is too long, and I can't just cut all that. So I appreciate your patience on this video, fellas. Now, let's cut to the chase. I have 6 lasers here for us today. I have the L3 Insight ATPIAL-C. I have the Steiner D-Ball A3, the Wilcox Raid XE, the B. Myers MAWL C1 Plus, the L3 Technologies NGAL, and the L3/Insight Full Power Pack 15. Now, obviously, these are ranging in terms of price, right? ATPIAL and an NGAL are in totally different universes of price and attainability. But these are ranging in price, attainability, performance, and features. And I'm going to do my best to give you guys the pertinent facts and opinions that I can provide you with. So again, the video isn't an hour long. Now, if you're new to IR lasers, all the terminology and whatnot, I'll quickly brief you. So there are 2 classes for, as far as we're concerned. There is Class 1 and there is Class 3. Class 1 are lasers that are allowed to be sold to civilians, and Class 3 are lasers that are restricted to only law enforcement and military. So if you own a full power pack 15 without a letterhead, you're not a police officer, whatever the case is, you're just a civilian, just like me. Then you own a gray market laser, which is totally fine. Just don't send that into L3. Now, as for testing, all these lasers, all 6 of them, were tested on the same night using the same iPhone 13, using my friend's Bravo 3 white phosphor Gen 2 Plus night vision tubes. And the lighting conditions were 88% illumination, very little cloud coverage, and a waxing gibbous. So we had a lot of light. Now, it's important to understand, you guys, that if you're looking to be impressed by a flashlight or a IR illuminator, you probably want it to be as dark as possible outside. Because if you have a flashlight and you're shining it, in broad daylight against the sidewalk, you're not going to be very impressed because, again, lots of ambient lighting. It's the same idea with these IR illuminators. All that being said, the 6 lasers I have here were all tested back to back, and we'll start with the ATPIAL-C. Now, before I show you guys a video under night vision of the ATPIAL-C's performance, letting you guys know the targets I have here. I have one target set up on the left-hand side at 100 yards, full-size IPSC target. We have another one set up on the right-hand side of the screen at 300 yards, and we have a third target set up at 500 yards. Now, you'll be impressed, I think, with the performance at 500 yards, because there's a point, obviously, where your eyes, even without night vision in front of them, just your unaided eyes, they're not going to be able to pick up a target. And for everybody, it's different. On your night vision, it's, of course, even worse because you're up, you're led to specs, you're going to be restricted by that, and whatever other conditions are going on in that night. So the targets, I think, do a good job to kind of show you guys, okay, that's PID capability at 100, that's 300, does it kind of do it, does it kind of not do it? And at 500, can we even pick it up at all? Because is the illuminator, is it competent to show you guys PID through the detail and through all the noise that your tubes are taking in through all that light? So without further ado, let's look at the ATPIAL-C. So looking at this target at 100 yards, the ATPIAL-C is not doing us a whole lot of favors for PID. Due to the conditions being so generous in terms of lighting, we can kind of see it if we know what we're looking for, that 100-yard IPSC target. That said, the ATPIAL-C has a fixed illuminator, so we can't tighten that divergence or widen it to get a greater utilization of its power, right? More candela, if we're talking about like white lights. And as you can see, the illuminator is not even in the power distribution. It's favoring sort of a 5, 6 o'clock direction in terms of illumination. And I'm not even going to show you guys the 300 yards, 500 yards, because it does not go out there. It might as well not even be turned on at that point. The pointer is the only thing telling us, that there's a target there in the first place, because it's kind of refracting off the target and showing as a larger, pointer than a smaller pointer, which is not helpful. Now, the ATPIAL-C, what is my opinion on it? Well, my opinion is that if you want the most bare bones IR illuminator laser combo on the market, this is not a bad way to go. That said, it depends on how much you pay for it. A retail price is around $1,400, sometimes even more, which is crazy. And I wouldn't even pay $1,400 for one of these, because there is the full power PEC 15 we'll look at in a bit, which is mere hundreds of dollars more to get to. But for the ATPIAL-C, you guys, it is a very neutered, very anemic device in terms of its technology and its features. Again, our illuminator on it is fixed. You can't adjust the divergence to widen the spill or to tighten it up and get more power out of it. And the other issue, of course, is the power, the performance. As we saw in the video, the illuminator was not even close. What I want out of a laser unit, you guys, is a good illuminator. I don't need a full power laser beam. That's actually counterproductive. I want a laser pointer, and I want the best illuminator possible. And in terms of illuminators, the ATPIAL-C has probably the worst that I've seen. Every unit that I've seen, probably 5 or more, they all look like this. They're all kind of spotty. They have a petri dish sort of effect. They're just not great units. Now, if you want to buy one to finish off a Mark 18 or a Block 2 M4A1 clone, like, hey, the world's your oyster, have at it. But if you want a serious contender or an adequate IR laser illuminator combo device, this is not it. Definitely want to save some more money and look at the other option, which is the DBAL A3. And as we can see here in this video, it is also very low in terms of performance. It's actually, I would say, depending on how you look at things, the illuminator might actually be even worse in terms of clarity. While you can adjust the illuminator on it, you can adjust the divergence to widen it and focus it some more. However, that is not productive because you already have such a dim illuminator as is. Why would you want to spread it out and lose even more of that power on target, right? That PAD capability. So yes, you can adjust the illuminator. However, it isn't very helpful to do so in the first place. And while the DBAL A3 has other functions such as a Viz override, I've never found that to be a particularly useful function. These are really the same device, you guys. The ATPIAL-C from L3 Insight and the DBAL A3. They're kind of just, Coke and Pepsi, red and blue. They're the same, but different. So if you prefer the form factor of the ATPIAL-C, right, by L3 Insight, where it's kind of lower, but takes up more real estate on the rifle's forend, that's not a bad way to go. However, if you have like a PDW, a shorter rifle, but you don't mind it being taller in terms of height, the Steiner units are probably the better go. But again, as far as you, the user, is concerned, these features really don't make much of a difference. So in terms of pricing, you guys, last I've seen, used and new, these are fluctuating around $1,100 to $1,400. About the same ballpark as the ATPIAL-C. And if I was going to buy a laser illuminator, I guess maybe I'd buy the Insight ATPIAL-C just because it, looks like a PEC. However, I'd recommend that you don't buy either of these. In my opinion, neither of these are solid buys. If you want just the most basic function and performance out of a unit for 50 yards and in, these are fine. Pick your preference, But both of these are class 1. They're very dated. They're not powerful. They're not intuitive. They don't really bring anything to the table. And for $1,100, $1,400, I think we can do better. So what is better? Well, the full power PEC 15, of course. The full power PEC 15 is a class 3 laser, meaning that if you're buying this as a civilian without a law enforcement letterhead or something thereabout, that means for you it is a gray market laser, which means more power. And this is a good thing and a bit of a bad thing, because as we can see here in the video, that laser, just the laser, not the illuminator, is very, very powerful. And again, we have a lot of illumination right here. So the fact that we can see the laser in these conditions is pretty ridiculous. And I would say it's a little too powerful. The issue with that is that laser is going to cause so much bloom on target that it's not useful. You're actually going to lose PAD capability in my experience. You're not going to be able to discern different details. And if your position at all matters to you, right, you're probably going to give away your position because you're telegraphing to anybody under the IR spectrum. I am at point A, that's at point B. It's not very productive, especially in a day and age where everybody's putting light caps and scope caps on everything. Regardless, the full power PEC 15's illuminator is substantial. The illumination out to 300 yards, as you can see right here, is pretty solid. 500 yards, however, is where the drop-off is. The issue with PEC 15s, just like the ATPIAL-C, the Steiner D-Ball A3, so on, is that it is the same edge emitting LED technology that they are using, just with more power. And the issue with that is our illuminator, despite being more powerful, it is very rough. It is very coarse in terms of its projection on target, meaning that your ability to discern a target, a man-shaped target, or a deer, coyote, whatever it is, from the environment that it's in, is going to be harder. You're not going to be able to make out those finer details, and depending on the artifacts in the illuminator itself, you might not be able to PID anything beyond a certain distance. However, this issue can be circumvented, if not mitigated, if you, the buyer, do your due diligence. So if you're buying your PEC 15 from a authorized, L3 dealer, or you're buying it from a, third-party seller, gray market style, you ask them for a lot of photos of the illuminator, because every single unit, regardless of age, in my experience, I've seen and I've used a lot of these units. I've owned more than a few. Every single one is unique in terms of how clean the illuminator is. If it has any artifacts, where the artifacts are positioned in the illuminator itself, every single one is different. And some are absolutely atrocious, some are pretty okay, and some are pretty solid. The one that we have here in the video is pretty decent, brand new 2022 data manufacturer, and it has very minimal artifacts in the illuminator. That said, if we go to 500 yards, as you can see here, we can't even PID the target at all. Obviously 500 yards with just your IR goggles on is a stretch, but this is important because you might be thinking, well, if that's at 500 yards, that's unrealistic for, just goggles or night vision or, a justifiable engagement, whatever it is. You might be thinking that it doesn't matter how it looks at 500 yards. And actually it does. If you have any ambition of using a clip-on, that sort of stuff, it actually does matter how good your illuminator is at those extended distances. Now, before we go to the MAWL, I want to say first that the PEC 15, for pricing, you guys, can be had around as low as $1,400, but it's pretty rough out there when it's that low. It could also be had for about $2,200 if it's brand new or brand new old stock, that sort of deal. And I would recommend you to kind of buy something that's around $1,800. You'll get a pretty decent to a nice unit. And if you want that, brand new, out of the package type deal, $2,200 is about the average I've seen. With all that in mind, you guys, this is the minimum spec. This is the minimum level of performance I would want out of an IR illuminator, laser designator, whatever you guys want to call it. This is as low as I will go in terms of performance because, again, for about $1,400 up to a little over $2,000, we have a solid illuminator that can do us well and good out past 300 yards. And we have a laser that is obviously more than enough to designate targets. So for all of you guys who are wondering, should I get the ATPIAL-C, the D-Ball A3, whatever variant thereof, I would recommend that you save some more money, a couple $100, maybe $1,000 more dollars, and buy a PEC 15. The biggest issues I can say with the PECs, you guys, is that some people have cracked the housings. This is not an uncommon failure. This is because the cross bolt goes right underneath the PEC's body, and that polymer, fiberglass, composite, whatever they're using, if you just crank on it, it might crack. I've owned many PECs. I've used a lot, and I don't know anybody who has broken one personally. This could just be because people are not going crazy torquing that cross bolt. That being said, it does get better than PEC 15s. So to show you guys what I'm talking about, let's look at the B. Meyers MAWL C1 Plus. You can see a huge difference here in terms of softness that the illuminator brings compared to the PEC 15 and D-Ball and ATPIAL. I mean, it is so soft. You have a lot of clarity on target to actually see the finer details. The 100-yard target is easy to see, the 300-yard target as well. And when we go up to 500 yards, you can just barely make it out. That is some pretty solid performance, you guys, because this is a Class 1 laser. That means that if anything goes wrong, you can send it to B. Meyers, and they're going to take care of you. Whether it's warranted or not, you can still send it to them, and they will service it, and they won't just retain it because it's a gray market going to go to CID. Now, despite the recent price increase, not really recent, but they increased their prices not too long ago, to $3,600. You can find these used for well under, especially if it's a pre-2021 model. For those of you guys who are not aware, the 2021, I believe in August, the newer units are including a triple tap feature, amongst some other design, some other technical aspects. I think they have a little bit of a tighter divergence on the illuminator, which gives you some more oomph out to distance. You can get MAWLs as low as $2,600 I've seen in 2023, and up to, of course, the retail price, but most of the time it's around $3,300, give or take, usually less. But is the performance of the MAWL enough to justify that price jump from a PEC 15? For me, it absolutely is. The form factor is fantastic. The simplicity of use is also there. With a PEC 15, D-ball, any of these old school devices, even the new Wilcox RAID XE, they have about 7 to 8 different settings with that rotary dial. And unless you train a lot with it, you become very familiarized. Well, regardless, the MAWL is just much simpler. It's also much faster, plain and simply, to switch from your different modes. And depending on what your profession is, maybe it's law enforcement, maybe going from that short flood throw to a mid throw, long throw, whatever it is. Maybe that's a priority. I don't know. However, the big selling point for me is that we're not using that old school technology. We're using VexCell. Again, vertical cavity, surface emitting laser. And how does a MAWL create this power? Well, in layman's terms, the FDA regulates the laser diodes at 0.7 milliwatts. And the MAWL is using a multitude of diodes in the illuminator to create the power that it's putting out. All these VexCell lasers are using a similar design in terms of a bunch of diodes all over the place, harnessing that legal limit to make the best illuminator possible. So I keep saying that word, illuminator. That is the big reason I'd go from a PEC 15 to a MAWL, because aside from the Kiji, another offering from B. Myers, the MAWL is the cheapest price point you can get into for a VexCell laser. And again, the illuminator for me is everything, because PID is important, and I don't like having artifacts on my unit. And if you're at all concerned about warranty, gray market lasers don't have a warranty. So it's really up to you. It's very subjective and personal, up to your own, tolerance for risk and finances, that sort of stuff. But for me, the jump from a PEC 15 to a MAWL is well worth it. Now, the next laser we'll be looking at is the Wilcox RAID XE. This is the Class 1 variant, because there is a Class 3 full power unit out there. In the video, we're at, again, 100, 300, 500 yards, same conditions. And as you can see, the illuminator is massive. You can widen the divergence quite substantially. The issue, however, with the RAID that the MAWL doesn't have, despite using the same VexCell technology, is that there's sort of a soft spot, sort of a donut in the center of the illuminator with the RAID, as you can see here. It's not that big of a deal, however, being that the center of your illuminator is what you're pointing your rifle forehand at, I would want it to be as bright as possible there. That's just me. However, the same way you can adjust the divergence very wide with the RAID, you can adjust it to be very, very tight and focused, almost a second laser beam. And it's pretty fantastic, because if you're using this for a clip-on type purpose, you're shooting extended, long range, or just, sub 1,000 yards, the MAWL, it will reach out there, don't get me wrong. However, the RAID will go much further. Where we're filming, we have a mountainside to us that's a 500 straight ahead. We have another one that's at 1,000. We have another one that's at 2,000. And the Wilcox RAID XE and the NGAL were the only units I had on hand that could actually be visibly seen at 2,000 yards. So take that for what it is. Now, for all the intricacies of the RAID XE, you guys, I could talk about that for like an hour, and I'm not going to today, maybe in the future. Just to kind of brief you on it, it is very advanced in terms of technology. I mean, it has an LED display on the back of it, for crying out loud. So you have a shot timer, you have different other features on there. You can adjust different settings, have a brighter illuminator with one setting with a lower power laser pointer, or you can have you can max those out. You can dial them down from like 10 to 1, in case 7 wasn't bright enough, 8 will be bright enough for you. It's pretty feature rich, almost too feature rich for most users. And I'm not alone in that sentiment. John Dufresne from Kinetic Consulting, a lot of other great guys out there who've actually done this stuff for a living and teach about night vision, they agree. The RAID is a fantastic unit. However, there are so many features, it begs the question, who needed these features in the first place? The RAID XE is truly a fantastic unit. However, mine was not perfect. Mine had some weird stuff going on with the filter in front of the IR illuminator that had a weird pattern kind of showing up, kind of a hexagon shape. And I sent it into Wilcox, and they ended up taking care of it pretty quick. And if you're going to use technology, like a brand new technology or a brand new implementation of that new technology, you have to be ready to take the hits on reliability and that sort of stuff. I'm not saying that Wilcox is like 6 Hour in terms of R&Ding with its customer base. And that's not what I'm saying either. But you will have a couple of things that they're probably still working out that you will come across when you buy new technology. Let's just say it like that. And again, Wilcox did a fantastic job at taking care of me. They sent it back within, I think, three weeks. And for me, as a just a civilian, that's fantastic. I got no problems with that. Now, the real issue for the Raid XE, in my opinion, is that they are very hard to come by. You can call it unobtainium, you can call it whatever you want. These are just not very easy to get. They're not nearly as accessible as a MAWL or PAC-15s or those kinds of units. Raid XEs are about $3,600 brand new, depending on who you buy it from, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. And as far as I'm aware of, the green LED or the green diodes for their visible lasers are discontinued. I think they're just, from what I remember reading, they're too expensive to source, yet B.E. Myers continues to do so. I don't know how they do it, but maybe that's why B.E. Myers raised their prices. Jokes. Now, what do I think about the Raid XE? Despite the flaw that mine had, which was remedied within 3 weeks' time, I think it's a fantastic unit. It has the best illuminator that I've seen out of a Class 1 device, truly. Even despite the soft spot in the middle, the fact that we can see its illumination out to 2,000 yards is nothing to slouch at. Additionally, I prefer a box form factor for me and my laser. The MAWL is fantastic for, I think, shorter rifles. That said, for any kind of a longer 14.5, 16-inch or bolt gun, the Raid XE is much lighter on the forend of a long rifle. You will notice that, as well as the form factor is better implemented than the MAWL. Because again, if you're not able to make full use of that short throw push lever on the MAWL, why even have the design in the first place? Now again, the MAWLs, you buy that for the technology and maybe the form factor, but I'm saying with the Raid, you get both. You get a box style form factor with VexCell technology. However, hard to come by, pretty expensive. You will not find these nearly as cheap as you can a MAWL, simply because there are not enough supply and demand. So with the Class 1 Raid XE in mind, we'll look at the Class 3 L3 Technologies NGAL. As you can see here, it is superb in terms of power. It's almost too good. We have an incredible illuminator, even better than the MAWL C1, even better than the Raid XE, of course. Those are both, again, Class 1 lasers. The NGAL is only available as a Class 3. We are making easy work of this 100-yard silhouette. Same for 300 yards, and you can't really see it on the computer or phone that you're looking at this on, but 500 yards with our naked eyes, we could actually pick up the target just barely. It was only possible with the NGAL, the MAWL, and the Raid, and the NGAL was the best at it, of course, due to its power output. Now, if there is an issue with the NGAL, it is that the laser is a little bit too powerful. This was designed for the military, and in the military, they are designating targets, maybe last-moving targets or close air support, whatever it is. But for the civilian, that might not be helpful. I would say it's actually counterintuitive, counterproductive, just like it was with the full power PAC-15, because again, a highly intense laser beam has a ton of bloom on target, regardless if it's at 50 yards or 100 or 200. For me, if I'm training under nods and I have the choice of a low power, high power laser, like a PAC or an NGAL, I generally use the dual low power because I don't want to damage my tubes, I don't want to damage anybody else's, and personally, it's just not necessary for those close-in targets that I find myself, 200 yards in using for my nods. And worth mentioning, if you're looking at a full power unit like the NGAL, this is a NGAL A1. Street price for this is at the low end $5,000, on the high end $6,000, anywhere in between. So this is the most expensive laser available in the market. And again, this is only available as a Class 3 gray market laser. If you have some kind of issue with this and you don't have a letterhead, again, L3 is not going to give you it back if you send it in for warranty work. It's just not happening. So if you're looking at a close competitor, the Wilcox Raid XE is pretty similar. And I would encourage you to check it out because with the NGAL's incredibly high output for both illumination and laser, you cannot adjust the brightness of either of those. Where with the Raid, if you have too much illumination, you can bring it down. But more importantly and more likely, you'll have too much of a laser pointer. So you can tone down the laser to say level 6, bring your illuminator up to level 10. This is applicable for both the Class 1 and the Class 3 Raid XE. The NGAL, in my opinion, is the most time-tested and proven out of all these VexCell units. Maybe the MAWL is just up there in terms of it, where the Raid XE now, because the Raid X is discontinued, the XE is still kind of working out the kinks. So we'll see what Wilcox does with that in the future. However, if you want the time-tested, proven VXL box-style laser, the NGAL is the move. That was a lot of talking. Now, how can I break this down for you guys, the buyer, to say which is the best one to go to, which is not even worth you looking at all? Well, I can give you guys a scoring out of 10 for each unit. It might be a little bit arbitrary. Well, it absolutely is arbitrary, but it is backed by several years of my experience. I've had a good fortune, again, to use a lot of these different units. Yeah, I've seen almost every unit available, and these are probably the most comparable to what you have available to you, so I hope this is relevant. But enough talking, let's discuss the scoring. The ATPIAL-C by L3 Insight, the PEC 15 for civilians, I'd rate this a 3 out of 10 because it isn't useless. You do have an IR pointer, and inside of 50 yards, especially indoors, the ATPIAL-C can still be effective. And for the price of around $1,200, we'll just say 12 to 14 on the high end. It isn't totally out of reach for the for the novice night vision buyer who just wants the the laser so we can start active aiming. It's not terrible. That said, it's it's 3 out of 10, I would say. Now onto the D-Ball A3, another ATPIAL-C sort of variant. Again, class 1 unit, not very feature rich, basically a reskinned ATPIAL-C just by Steiner. This is, I'd consider it maybe a 3.5 out of 10, simply because you can adjust the divergence. However, it's sort of a backwards feature because, as I stated earlier, if your power is super low at this spread, widening that would only do you a disservice. There's no gain to that with the limited amount of power coming from that unit. So 3.5 out of 10. Now on to the PEC 15. The PEC 15, you guys, is time and tested, proven, probably the best bang for your buck IR unit on the market. On a scale from 1 to 10, I would give it a 7. It's a very versatile unit. It's time tested and proven, and for a price tag of $1,400 to $2,200 at the max, I would consider it to be the best bang for your buck. Now, again, this is using the same edge emitting diode technology as the last two units I discussed, but you're actually getting somewhat what you pay for here. And I say that because if you just save up another $400, $800 from your ATPIAL-C, you can have a brand new PEC 15. This unit is going to hang and perform very similarly, very effectively, depending on how you use it, to even the Raid XE, the MAWL, the NGALs out there. So for a fraction of that price, the PEC 15, for what it brings to the table, I think is the best value. Now, as for the B. Meyers MAWL C1 Plus, this I would consider to be, again, the most entry-level VXL unit you can get. And if you like the form factor of them all, having the simplicity of the buttons, the throw lever, propeller cap, you don't mind the weight of it and having it offset on your rifle, it is a very compelling unit, probably the best one for most people. And with a price tag used of around $2,600 up to new at $3,600, it is not a bad way to go. I would give it probably a 7, 7.5 out of 10. Because it's not doing anything necessarily different than a PEC 15. However, it's doing everything the PEC 15 does, but better and more refined. That's just what happens when you have years of more development and technology. So 7.5 out of 10. Now for the Wilcox Raid XE Class 1, this is again a entry level, despite being a price tag of nearing $4,000. This is the cheapest box style laser I can find on the current market that is using VXL technology. Because the next up and comer to that, the next challenger, would be the NGAL. So at around $3,600, with the features that you get, adjusting all your brightness levels, your settings, different presets, all the features that I haven't even explored with my unit, it's compelling. Depending on how into that stuff you are, it might be the only option for you. Now, and as stated earlier, the Raid differs from the MAWL in that it is a VXL unit. However, it is a box style laser, which I actually prefer. Just on a wider range of guns, I think it's more applicable. So I would give it, my personal score, an 8 out of 10. I would say that the demerit points are being applied for the warranty issue. Not even warranty issue, just for the defect and having to be warranted in the first place. So again, 8 out of 10 for the Wilcox Raid XE Class 1. Now, as for the NGAL, you guys, at $5,000 to $6,000, might be thinking I'll say that it's got to be a 10 out of 10. And I'm not going to say that because no laser is perfect. The NGAL absolutely isn't. That being said, it is the most powerful out of every laser I've shown you. It is probably the best executed, I would say. It is probably the most durable, just because I trust PEC-15s very much. And the form factor of the NGAL being as well a box style laser is very, very hard to beat for me. Not only is it a box style laser, but it is the smallest unit I have shown you. It is so small. I wish I had it in hand here. I've returned all these units to their rightful owners. The NGAL is so small, you guys, and it only weighs, gosh, I think 4.5 ounces. It is the lightest and smallest unit, which can be a pro to con for some people. I think it's a huge pro. It might be some naivete on my part, but I genuinely hope and I pray that L3 makes a civilian class unit, because the NGAL is fantastic again in terms of form factor, size, footprint on your rifle. It is hard to beat. But again, the issues of gray market lasers, if anything happens to this, you might be SOL. So for those reasons, I would give it a 9 out of 10. And because you guys are going to ask, why didn't you talk about the PEC-2? Well, the PEC-2 that you saw in the thumbnail, you guys, another laser lent to me, that one was not functioning at the time of testing. There was a lot of erosion caused by alkaline batteries. If you guys are not aware, do not put alkaline batteries in important electronics because they tend to leak and they're just not efficient. But that was the case with the PEC-2. They had leaked some alkaline batteries and there was a ton of corrosion, and I did not have the wire brushes and resources necessary to get that PEC-2 in working order to demonstrate. But PEC-2s, you guys, those could be had around $800 to $1,000. There is no visible laser on it. It is purely just IR. There is a dual low, a dual high. It's kind of like the PEC-15, basically. Just significantly larger in footprint, not as intuitive. Looks cool, but I would not buy one personally unless it was for cloning purposes, which I don't partake. So that is all the lasers, you guys. I hope this has been helpful. As I said earlier, there are so many details I had to leave out deliberately because the runtime has already exceeded what I would hope that it would be. I'm not sure where I'm at right now, but to get that runtime meant things had to be overlooked. You guys, the units you've seen here today, they're all good units in their own respects. Even the anemic ATPIAL-C and DBAL-A3, they're fine. It just depends on what you're going to use them for. And if you are anticipating that you're going to use your night vision all the time and you need the latest and greatest, well, the Raid XC might be for you. Or paying a premium for a NGAL or a MAWL X1 or DA, the full power units, it might be for you. But I think for most shooters, night vision lasers are a little overrated. I know you've watched this whole video and you're thinking, now you tell me that. That's my opinion. I think having night vision goggles is fantastic. Being able to see in the IR spectrum is fantastic. It's the closest we have as human beings to a superpower. What I'm saying, you guys, is that if you focus on passive shooting, like you have an EOTech or a quality red dot such as an Aimpoint T2, you can passive aim very effectively. Now, you won't always have the illumination that you need, and maybe for that reason alone, you opt for the IR illuminator, such as a PEC-15 or a MAWL, or maybe just a Kiji, whatever it is. But I believe that passive aiming is the move. I think it is not the future necessarily, but IR technology has only become more and more commonplace, whether it's domestic or abroad. More and more people have it. So broadcasting your position with your fancy, $5,000 night vision laser isn't always the smartest idea. So food for thought, you guys, and that's also worth considering. This stuff is not cheap. It is very, very expensive. If you think buying an Aimpoint T2 is expensive or a Knights SR15 is expensive, try buying a laser that you use maybe once a month. That's the reality for you guys. I bought my nods several years ago. I used them very much in the first year and very much in the second year, and in the past year, barely at all. And the amount of shooters that I know who own night vision and don't use it is massive. And there's a couple reasons for this. The first is that this stuff is expensive, and the novelty, while significant, night vision is super cool, don't get me wrong. But after a while, that novelty does wear down, and you stop going out to shoot with it. So it'll sit in a desk, it'll sit in a safe, wherever it might be, and it won't be used. Maybe once a month, maybe a couple times throughout the year. This is very commonplace for a lot of people that I know that actually own nods. The other reason is that it's so cost prohibitive that only people who are at a certain point in their lives can responsibly afford to justify buying nods, or not even justify, just responsibly own them. Some people out there will just buy their night vision with credit cards and Credova, whatever it is, and it's irresponsible. Don't do that. You don't need to do that. You should not do that. There's a lot of young guys out there who just want to have the latest and greatest and keep up with the Joneses, that sort of stuff. And you guys, don't do that because you're doing yourself a disservice. This isn't financial advice. This is just me shooting straight with you guys. But the people that you see on the internet who are buying night vision and, thermals and other amazingly cutting edge technology that is super cool, they're probably at a point in their lives where they're doing pretty good and other things are being taken care of. That being said, they don't use their equipment very often because at that point in your life, say 30, 40, 50 years old, you likely have obligations, right? You have kids, you have a family, you can't afford to be, shooting night vision of all things. Very often it's at the oddest hours of the day. So it's for those reasons that I see a lot of people not using their night vision. And I just want to put that out there because a lot of people, again, will say, you need to have this or you'll be killed in the streets. It's the future, and if you don't have night vision or lasers and thermals, insert whatever ridiculous hyperbole here. And a lot of you guys can do yourself a lot of good by just buying quality firearms, such as a legitimate AR-15, be it a BCM, it could be a Daniel Defense or a Knight's Armament, whatever it is. Having a quality handgun and just investing into yourself through training and ammunition. And I'm not saying training as in paying for a class several times a year for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. That's fine down the line when you have things that you are able to diagnose and you're at a certain level of skill. Invest in yourself with a shot timer. Keep yourself accountable for what it is that you're doing. Have range days where you're not just going out to take pictures on Instagram or for social media clout, because if that's what you're out there for, you're not training. And I'm only telling you guys this because I've done all this. I've been the guy who just goes to the range and it's just take cool photos. And that's the reality for a lot of people when it comes to night vision, even in the gun community in general, but especially with night vision, because it is so cool. What I'm trying to say is that a lot of people are not using their time effectively to actually be the best shooters that they can be. So I just want to let you guys know that wherever you're at, don't think you need to go and buy an NGAL or a MAWL or a full power PEC 15 just because some guy on Instagram does or some guy on YouTube does and says that they're cool. Tend to the other areas in your life, all the other facets, finances, your physical health is incredibly important, you guys. I'm not saying anything new here, but there are way more things that deserve your money, let alone just your space, than buying the latest and greatest, night vision and thermal stuff. Just be responsible. And when you're able to buy night vision and it's not going to be a huge financial detriment to you, go ahead. That's all good. I hope this helps you guys. As always, I appreciate your time and sticking around and watching. The videos will come out whenever they do. I'm aiming for a video a month. It is what it is. I have other obligations. If you have any questions, again, leave them down below. I'm happy to answer things, answer anything that I might have missed. And yeah, it's not that serious, you guys. Have fun. Just be productive and be well. Thanks for watching, guys.